I'm Corbitt Wall with this Feeder Flash feature. I'm here in College Station, Texas, and sitting here with my friend Dr. Rodrigo, who is the founder, owner, and CEO of FERA Diagnostics and Biologicals. Good to see you, Dr. Rodrigo.
Good to see you too, Corbin.
We're gonna visit about this product and the background of it and the uses, the successes, and just hopefully gain more knowledge about FerAppease, your main product, right?
Fantastic.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Well, we'll just start from the beginning. I know from our conversations over the few years that we've known each other that Dr. Rodrigo moved to United States from Brazil and accepted a position with Cornell.
That's right.
Originally, that's why you came to the United
Yeah.
States.
So that was 23 years ago.
Really?
So I was 23 years old and I was dating my wife. And when I finished vet school, she was a classmate of mine, so she's also a veterinarian. We had an opportunity to move to the U.S. to do I was accepted into the residency program at the ambulatory clinic at Cornell University in the veterinary college. And that's how it started. And the funny thing is that the Bible of diseases of dairy cattle or dairy cattle medicine was written by a doctor called Bill Rebune. And I had that book in vet school in English, and I still have it. There's manure all over the pages because I was just working on the farms and reading it, and all of a sudden I was at Cornell visiting with the same clients that Dr. Rebune visited.
Wow.
And while he wrote the book that I could just dream of being in that place. So it was kind of a dream come true, actually, to be able to go to Cornell and not only get a residency done, but a PhD and also work as a professor there for 13 years. So learned a lot. It was a very important part of our learning process in the U.S. and that really, it's a remarkable part of my life. Can't remember.
So a lot of your research that you did while you're at Cornell was on dairy cattle, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I grew up in a ranch in Brazil. My family had a ranch. My dad sold it, but the motivation to work with cattle was because of the ranch. But the dairy industry captivated me because of its complexity. And as a veterinarian, there's a lot more to do in the dairy industry because dairy cows, they get sick a lot. Dairy calves get sick. Reproduction is a huge challenge. So I saw it at that time of my life as a challenge, and so I want to learn how to be a good dairy veterinarian. And that's how I set up that as a challenge for me as a professional. And I think I learned how to be a dairy vet.
That's good. But you did a lot of research while you were at Cornell, and you published a lot of research.
So we've had a very productive research program. I have had the chance to mentor several residents, PhD students. Most of them are professors. So I have students that are teaching at UC Davis, at Texas Tech, University of Florida, University of Minnesota.
Wow.
They're all over the place. So yeah, we published over 140 scientific articles, and I have
Impressive.
like 25 patents that I'm an inventor on. So I think it was we had a pretty prolific, productive program during that tenure at Cornell.
That's great. So at some point, you had the dream of building FERA and going forward with the FerAppease.
Yep.
And so you had kind of had this in the back of your mind maybe for a while, or how'd that go about?
I always had an entrepreneurial ambitions and interest. I've always liked to be involved with businesses. When I was working with dairies as a dairy veterinarian. I always, got involved in the business aspect of all of my clients. And I founded the FERA as a company more than 10 years ago. And it was one of my dairy clients that came to me and said, this is a funny story because I had a very large grant from the Department of Agriculture, the USDA. And that project was a very basic science project, and it wouldn't really contribute anything to the dairy.
Mm-hmm.
We needed to do a lot of things, collect a lot of samples, and usually we make a contribution to the dairy, like we evaluate an intervention. We can, in the end, we could improve reproductive performance, improve health,
Trying to get more pounds of
more
milk or
pounds of
something.
milk.
Yeah.
There's a question that in the end that could be a contribution to the dairy. In this case, there was no contribution. So the dairyman looked at me and said, "Well, what's in it for me?" In this case, it was like, "Well, nothing. The greater good." And then he looked at me and said, "Well, if you can help me develop a test to identify the mastitis cows that are infected with a certain bacteria, in this case was streptococcus, then you can do your research here." I said, "Well, that's easy. I'll do that." And I developed the test first for streptococcus infections, and then we added a gram-negative component to it, gram-negative bacteria, and then we added a staph component, and all of a sudden we had a diagnostic test that he was loving to use it. He was my first client, this dairyman, and when we finished the project, he looked at me and said, "Well, how are we going to get the test now that the project is over?" And said, "I don't know. When we can keep giving it to you, I guess." I was like, "No, just open a company and you can sell it to me. I'll buy it." And that's how we got started.
That's how FerAppease began.
That's how FERA was born, yeah. And then we started
But
developing
that's before FerAppease.
That's way before
Okay.
FerAppease, yeah.
Okay.
So we were, that's where the diagnostics come
I
from.
see.
So we have a line of products that have been used very successfully, AccuMast and AccuStaff. We have a diagnostic test for small animals as well called UTID. So these products were all out in the market. They have been for over 10 years. So, and that was how it was born. And then during the pandemic, I licensed one of my own technologies from Cornell,
Okay.
which was a vaccine, a subunit vaccine against mastitis. And we own that technology. We have it, it's patented in the US. We have patent pending applications all over the world. And we're developing that as a product. And after I left academia and we moved the company and my family to Texas, we started working on the development of FerAppease, and that's why it was truly an independent project of FERA. And even though stress has been in the back of our minds as researcher for a long time, we gave birth to the technology in Texas.
So that started right here.
Started right here. Yep.
You mentioned your family. This is a family operation.
It is.
Totally.
Yeah.
I met your wife earlier.
Yep.
We got to tour the facility, the manufacturing and the shipping and the laboratories and everything. Your impressive son, Felipe.
Yep.
And you have another younger son, Rafael, that I've not met.
Yep.
But this is a family operation. And then your employees seem like part of your family.
Part of the family. That's
You don't
right.
have a big turnover of employees.
No, not at all. Our people that we hired tend to stick around. And we make it a priority. First of all, the name of the company is actually the initials of my two sons.
Oh,
So Felipe and Rafael, that's why FERA.
I see.
So it is a
Didn't know
family
that.
company, and
Uh-huh.
Felipe is already a full-time employee in the company. He is our key account manager. Rafael works anytime that he has availability. He's just a junior in high school, but this week is his last week, and then he's gonna be working here next week. So it is a family company, and we tend to treat our employees as family. So we don't have a lot of turnover. Like we treat people, I feel like You know, if I'm going to run a company, I want to run a company with people that are passionate, that are excited, enthusiastic to show up, you know, every day in the morning and wear the shirt and help us build something great. If they're not happy and if they're not motivated, if they're not excited about it, then I won't be excited to do it. If I had to run a company in any other way, I don't know if I would be able to.
So you guys feed off each other
Yeah,
that way. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
So FerAppease, and
yep,
I can't believe that that's the way you got FERA, but I'm glad to know it now. But
yeah,
FerAppease, the product, has been hugely successful.
yep,
And I always say when I'm talking about it, you know, it's the revolutionary product that's scientifically proven.
yep,
And that is exactly right.
yeah,
And so, and you developed that for bovine,
yep,
both dairy and beef,
yep.
right? And
That's
it
right.
works well for both.
Yes, and when we originally launched the product, and this has been 3.5 years ago now, and the first studies that we did was actually in baby dairy calves, dairy heifers.
Okay.
And that was what gave us the idea that this would be a big product. Now, I have to admit that over the last 3 years, we have invested millions of dollars in research. We have done research all over the US, Canada, Mexico, Brazil. So we have learned a tremendous amount about this product. Initially, I personally thought that, well, this is a cool tool to modulate behavior of animals, right? So they're calmer, they're not going to hurt themselves, they're not going to break facilities and hurt people. I thought it was going to be a minor product that, and had no idea it would have the impact that it actually have in the health and productivity of animals. And I'll just give you an example. We're here to talk about beef cattle, but we just finished a large trial in dairy cattle with University of Florida. Cattle were treated once with FerAppease right after parturition, right after they gave birth. And dairy cows are very stressed animals, right? There's a lot of things, including milking, but, you know, regrouping, calving. You know, just an example, dairy cow, as soon as she gives birth, we go there and remove her wet calf from her.
Mm-hmm.
So birthing
And
is stressful.
that upsets her.
That
Yeah,
upsets her, yeah. Took her baby away right after parturition. And that's something that we must do for the good of the calf,
sure.
because otherwise the calf will get sick.
Right.
We need to make sure
That's
that
the
he
only
gets
way
the,
you're going to
that's
get the
when
milk.
exactly, and we need to that is that's what we call a mandatory management that happens. You know, like castration
Sure.
and all of that. We need to do that, but those cattle that were treated, and by the way, there was almost 2,000 cows in this experiment, 3 dairy farms. The cattle that received the FerAppease treatment produced 5 pounds per cow per day more than the control. And that's a single treatment.
Wow.
Right after parturition. FerAppease has an action of, you know, anywhere between 14 to 20 days. But the truth is, we helped those cattle go to feed faster. They went to the milking parlor and performed a complete milk out faster. They didn't get as much mastitis, which is a huge problem.
Yeah.
They didn't get, actually, by the way, they got 50% less metritis, which is a tremendously important disease. And their culling and death in the first 60 days was also significantly decreased. So we talked about beef cattle, but the return over investment for the dairy industry
It's even more.
is 1 to 65. For every dollar you put into FerAppease, you return $65.
That's amazing.
It's incredible because we're changing the entire lactation
Yeah.
curve of that animal. We're making them healthier and more productive. So, just to illustrate that, the more we research FerAppease, the more we understand that this is truly an earth-shattering, a revolutionary, something that is going to change not only the beef industry, but the dairy industry and the swine industry as well. So it is fascinating.
So you mentioned stress, and that's address the stress. That's
that's
your,
what it does.
main
Yeah,
moniker there. But and I kind of think of it as if you're talking about something mechanical, your opponent is friction.
yep.
And if you're talking about production of livestock, your opponent is stress.
Stress. Yeah,
And this addresses that
That's
stress.
exactly it.
Can you tell us how that works?
Yeah,
And
it's
it's amazing.
in a very simple way. What FerAppease does is reduce the ability of the animal to react to what they perceive as dangerous or threatening or anything like that. So in a very complex way, they're reading the world around them through their senses,
Sure.
right? Their vision, their ears, they're perceiving what's going on around them. And when we manage them in certain ways, they feel threatened, and they should feel threatened because every time we put an animal in a squeeze chute,
Yeah.
something bad happens to that
Yeah.
animal, right?
The next time they come, it's the
Same
same.
thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. I tell people like animals build traumatic memories just like we do. I was giving a talk in Argentina, and there was about 200 people. We launched the product there last week, and I asked them, raise your hand if you enjoy going to the dentist. And nobody raised their hand. It's like the reason why we despise going to the dentist is because we build traumatic memories of that experience, right? It hurts. Nobody likes to get hurt. So what FerAppease does, when you stimulate a gland in the nose, that is that pheromonal detection gland, it sends a message to the part of the brain that process that threat information and creates anxiety, fear, stress, and produces adrenaline and cortisol. And basically what it does, just like an anxiety medication for people, it downregulates that part of the brain. So people don't, cattle
Mhm.
don't feel as anxious. They don't feel as, they don't react to the changes they're perceiving from the environment in the same way. So they're calmer. They're, therefore the word appeasing, they feel more appeased. They're more comforted. They're less anxious. They're less afraid. And ultimately, what that accomplishes for cattle is by preventing that stress axis from being activated, we prevent the two bad hormones that are associated with stress from being released. Adrenaline first and then cortisol. Why is that important? Well, when they feel like their life is at risk, they produce adrenaline and cortisol to prepare their bodies to fight that threat, right? And when they produce those two hormones, everything in their body prioritizes their immediate survival. They're like, the predator's gonna eat me. I
Mhm.
need to survive the attack of the predator. That's that's exactly what their simple primitive mind is preparing their bodies for. What is the consequence of that? Well, the consequence of that is that they're gonna take resources away from their immune system.
Mhm.
They're gonna take resources away from growth and milk production, right?
Sure.
And actually, they'll go the opposite direction. Instead of growing, they'll break their bodies apart to provide energy for that immediate need.
Hmm.
So they'll break down protein, they'll break down fat, and all of that energy goes to the blood and increases their blood sugar levels, which decreases appetite. That's why when you buy highly stressed cattle, they don't eat
Right.
because stress, will decrease appetite. It's not their priority.
Mhm.
Their priority is to survive the predator, and that's why they get sick
Mhm.
because their priority is not to survive bacterial attack or viral attack, is to survive the predator, right?
But the therapies, if I understand it right, it comes from the mammary,
Yes.
and so that's why they felt the most comfortable is when they were a baby calf and they were up under the
Yep.
mammary, sucking on their mother, and they felt calm that way, and that continues through their life, right?
It continues through their life. So, this cattle that were in this trial in California, the dairy cattle, there were cows that were, fifth lactation. They're older cows, and they
Yeah,
react to the product just as much as a baby calf would.
amazing.
So yeah, the pheromone is originally and naturally produced in the skin of the mammary gland, and when calves or piglets or kids, lambs and things like that, when they're nursing, they get that direct stimulus from the skin of the mammary gland that is stimulating and causing that comforting, calming effect. And why is that important? Well, it's very important that a mother and a baby bond,
Right.
right? If you have that strong bond between cow and calf, you're going to have a successful calf.
Mm-hmm.
And in nature, and if you talk about natural evolution, nature only cares about the spread of the genes. So, successful mother and calf relationship creates successful calves. They're more likely to reproduce and pass on their genes. That is why these pheromone maternal appeasing substance or bovine maternal appeasing substance is present in every mammal. As a matter of fact, it is also present in birds as well. So it's
Really?
incredibly conserved in one way or in one shape or form. It's incredibly conserved even in lower species, from chickens to rats all the way to human beings. Actually, it is present there. So it's a very important pheromone, and the reason why it's so important is to create that strong bond between mother and offspring.
Of course. Yeah. And you and I came into contact, and the first time I heard about your product was from Jeff Slatton with Beaver County
Yep.
Stockyards in Oklahoma. And he was telling me, and originally I felt, and I think a lot of other people feel, that the only reason that you need to use FerAppease is whenever you're buying high stress calves, mostly out of sale barns, and you're commingling them, and they're in a new environment and they're highly stressed, which it does work for that very well.
Yes.
And a lot of people use it for that, and
Yep.
and they have a lot of success with it. I mean, I've had testimonials from some of the toughest guys all over the country that send me messages and said, I finally tried some of that foo-foo dust you advertise, and it really works. And then they're sold on it, and they'll never go without it again. But it's not just for those high-risk cattle. It's basically anytime cattle are exposed
It's
to
just
any
stress.
stress.
Yeah. The FerAppease is already part of the protocol of high risk cattle. I would say at least 35 to 45% of the cattle that are backgrounded or stalkers or even the ranch cattle are treated with FerAppease every year. Yes, high risk cattle, and it does wonder for those calves,
Yeah,
right? Because they're very stressed, they're going to get sick, they're going to get respiratory disease, and depending on the amount of risk, they're going to die as well. So, and we have done several trials treating those calves, and they respond better to antibiotics.
mm-hmm.
They survive better.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as sick, and they gain more weight. So
Yes.
that is we just finished another trial actually in Alberta, Canada, and it was the first time that we actually did a trial with weaning calves. These were weaning heifers. They were about 500 pounds weaned, and we did have the activity monitors. So we measured not only eating behavior, but rumination behavior. And it was fantastic that the quality of eating behavior that was expressed on animals that were treated is key. So the control animals, they tended to slug feed, meaning they're afraid of the feed bunk. They
Mm-hmm.
stand in the back, they walk around until they're very hungry,
Mm-hmm.
and then they go there and slug feed. And
Mm-hmm.
slug feeding behavior is bad,
Mm-hmm.
especially for feedlot cattle, because it causes rumen acidosis
Sure.
and mortality.
Yeah. You get a belly ache
You
and
got a
then you're
belly
done.
ache and
Yeah.
you're done. Yes. And the cattle that were treated, they behave more like they are bunk broke. They're used to it. They're not afraid. So they'll go and eat smaller meals, but very frequent.
Mm-hmm.
So the frequency of eating behavior
And drink.
increase and drink
And
more.
drink, yeah.
Yep.
And that's what a lot of people that have found this products to be very helpful is that my cattle are keeping hydrated.
Yep.
And when your cattle are hydrated, everything works
Everything works
better.
better. Yeah,
And including all their antibiotics and their vaccinations and whatever they give them, everything works better when they're hydrated,
that's
right?
right.
Okay.
Hydrated and well fed.
Yes.
And then the end result of that trial is calves were much heavier and they gain more weight not only because they consume more feed, but because they're more efficient as well. I
Hmm.
told you that stress breaks down the body of the animals, right?
Hmm.
So if the controls animals, they're slug feeding, they're making inefficient use of the feed, but they're also in a catabolic state, so their body is breaking down. The treated animals are making very good use, so their biological efficiency, their feed conversion rates are much higher.
Hmm.
So you're spending less money on feed and you're getting more pounds of live calves, which everybody wants.
Yes.
And you know the average daily gains on those calves was like 250 grams higher per, which is more than a half pound higher per day than
Hmm.
the control animals. And that's what we do to these higher stress level animals. Now, to answer your question about lower stress, actually, our friend Jeff Slatton, our mutual friend Jeff Slatton, thank you very much, Jeff, for the partnership and for being one of our earliest adopter of use FerAppease. And but I told Jeff, I was like, Jeff, I am 100% sure that FerAppease does wonder for lower risk animals in translating this to yearling cattle that have already been through the high stress phase,
Right, right.
8 to 900
Yeah.
pound
And this
steers.
is more application of this product.
Exactly,
Yeah.
more
And
obligation.
and I think we need to teach the people and inform them about the other applications. Sure, it's great for high risk calves.
Yes,
It's great. That's I think everybody knows that maybe by now.
by
If
now,
they
yeah.
don't, they've been hiding
They,
under a rock
or they're
somewhere. Yeah.
missing, or they're missing out if they don't.
Yeah. Why is this guy making more money
Yeah,
than me? But
exactly.
but these other applications. So tell us about the yearling test you did.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's it.
These were single source
Single
yearlings,
source yearlings,
low
low
stress.
stress.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So for this category of animals, we have to, well, mortality is still important, especially now that we're feeding these animals to
Oh, yeah.
17,
Especially what
1800
these things are
pounds.
bringing now. That hurts.
Exactly. It
Ouch.
hurts. So
Yeah.
if you lose one steer for every 100 that you buy,
Hmm.
it's one too many.
Yes.
And they'll lose, the average mortality rate for this category of animals for the length of feeding period that we're feeding this cattle right now
Hmm.
is anywhere between 1 and 3%. We're still losing way too many of
Sure.
these,
Yeah.
right?
Everybody
And
thinks that 2% is normal, and if you can keep it around there, you're good. Why lose those 2%?
why?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And there's two stress, and I call these bottlenecks or opportunities, right? The bottlenecks of the production system. So yes, these were 900-pound steers, single source. I think they were bunk broke because when they got there, everybody went to eat. They were sourced in Oklahoma in the Panhandle, and then we brought them down to the Texas A&M.
Good cattle. I mean, yeah.
Fantastic cattle. They
Beautiful cattle.
performed
Yeah.
like uh, you know, top 5% of the cattle in the country because the control calves,
So you brought those down to Bushland,
Bushland,
Texas, to
Texas.
the feedlot they
Yeah,
have there.
beautiful feedlot facility,
Yeah.
research feedlot facility, a really well run facility. And we had 30 pens of animals. 15 pens received FerAppease
It
on
was
arrival.
basically just a normal feedlot. They were just chopped up into
Chopped up,
smaller
yeah,
pens.
smaller pens, 8 animals per pen.
Okay.
So if you think that very low stress, right?
Yeah.
These cattle were pampered,
Yeah.
right? They only traveled 4 hours maybe.
Yeah. No big deal.
No big deal. They got there, they got processed, and then went into 8 pens. If they all want to eat at the same time, they had access. If
Plenty
they
of
all
bunk
want to drink,
space.
they
Yeah.
had they could drink. Social competition is nothing. It's only 8 animals in a pen. Beautiful. Treated animals received a dose of FerAppease when they got processed at arrival. In a second one, when they were reimplanted, they were fed for a period of 138 days total. So when they were brought back to be reimplanted, a second dose of FerAppease were applied on the treatment group. And we, first of all, mortality rate on the control animals was 3%. Mortality rate on the treated animals was 1.5%. So just the reduction in mortality rate,
yeah.
1.5 steer, and I paid a lot of money for these steers.
They're high dollars.
They're high dollars. Would have a return over investment of 1 to 4
Right.
by using FerAppease.
You can buy a lot of FerAppease.
You can buy a lot of FerAppease with that. You buy a lot of, now that's just the icing of the cake because the bulk of the benefits were performance. The cattle that were treated with FerAppease ate more, but they gained more weight and they finished with their hot carcass weights being almost 16 pounds. It was 15.6 pounds more hot carcass weight on the treated animals compared to the control animals.
Now, some people may not think that's a lot, but when you're feeding cattle in a commercial environment, the margins are so tight.
Yep.
That's huge. 16 pounds on the rail, that is huge.
That is huge.
Yes.
That is huge. But not only
especially
that,
for such a small investment, and it's not a big deal to apply the product.
It's not a big deal to apply the product. It's a small investment. We're accomplishing all of this because the cattle is feeling better. We're improving the well-being of the animals, and they're returning with health and productivity. Now, the one thing that was incredible is we also increase carcass quality. There are other technologies, particularly growth-promoting hormones that promote lean muscular growth. And I love those technologies. We should all be using it because, I'm all about making more with less, right? Now, but usually those technologies increase more carcass weight and less carcass quality because they're promoting lean muscle growth. Now, FerAppease, by decreasing stress and increasing intake, it gives you the pounds, 16 pounds of hot carcass weight, but it also increases carcass quality. So marbling significantly increased.
Well, there's a correlation between excited cattle. They don't marble as well.
That's right.
As calmer cattle. So naturally that would happen.
That would happen. Yeah. And we dropped the...
You got higher marbling scores.
Higher marbling scores.
It's going to give better quality grade.
You got it.
More return on their grid if you're selling them on the grid.
If you're selling them on the grid, which the majority of the cattle in the U.S. is sold on the grid. If you're selling them on live weight, they were 25 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
So you're making money. If you're selling them on the grid, there's 15.5 pounds of hot carcass weight. There's more Choice Plus. The Choice Plus was increased by almost 10 percentage points. So we dropped the percentage of select carcasses from 10% to 5%.
That's huge.
So there's a lot of money in improving carcass quality. That was the result. So long story short, low-risk cattle still suffer stress. Now you're paying not with mortality and disease because those cattle do not get the pneumonia and respiratory disease that high-risk cattle.
You don't expect them to.
You don't expect,
especially single source.
They usually do
normally
good.
Don't have any trouble, but it's still
costing you.
Yes,
and still costing you in production and quality.
Yeah.
So eliminating stress with FerAppease for low-risk cattle will give you more pounds, will give you more intake, which is converted to more heavier carcasses, but also better quality carcasses too.
Yeah. So there's another application. So, and of course, you're probably not still finding out, but I'm finding out all the time when I hear these people with testimonials coming back said, I tried it for this and it worked. I tried it for that and it worked. And things that we haven't even talked about. What's some other major applications you've heard of that have been successful with FerAppease?
So we've been asked this question since we launched FerAppease. What about reproduction? What about reproduction? What about reproduction?
On the beef side.
On the beef side, yeah. And I said, well, we don't have any data to support that. We didn't have any data to support that. Now we have some data coming out on reproduction, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, so one of the largest...
You assume if the milk cows are milking better, the beef cows are going to milk better too.
That's true.
Bigger calves.
Well, that's another frontier that we need to explore is treating fresh beef cows, right?
Yes.
And maybe the calves as well. Are we going to have that natural bond strengthened? Do we have bigger calves, more productive cows? That's one thing. But the question on reproduction is, at breeding, can I improve my conception rates with the use of FerAppease? And the answer to that question is yes. If you treat cows with FerAppease When you're performing AI, not in any other, if you're doing timed AI,
Well, that's when
you don't
you
want to,
got them in a chute.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you have them in a chute and you're going to put semen on the cattle, you treat them with FerAppease, you're going to see a significant improvement in conception rates.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there's one of the largest embryo transfer companies in the world, I can't name them right now, have performed a large trial treating recipient cattle at the time they were receiving their embryo transfer. So this is a controlled trial and had a treatment and a control. And the animals that were treated with FerAppease at the time they were receiving the embryos, they had a 62% conception rate. The control animals have a 46% conception rate. Now this is almost unbelievable.
Yes.
But this is a large controlled trial. And one of the questions that I had to the company is like, tell me what is your yearly average for conception rate? Because I wanted to know, is this, was the control group actually lower than normal? What's going on? They said 45%, which is exactly what the control did.
Yeah.
What's abnormal and extremely high is what they got for the FerAppease treated cattle, which is that 62% conception rate was unbelievable.
But there's another application.
Another application.
I had one of my listeners, he told me every year when I get ready to turn my bulls in, he said, I just dread it because I have to mix these bulls that aren't used to each other. And what that's dangerous, and get one of your bulls hurt, get somebody else hurt, tear up equipment, facilities. And he said, I had to run them through. And he said, I put FerAppease on them and I had no trouble.
Yeah.
He said, oh, it was wonderful. He said, it just helped me so much. And I don't know if you'd ever heard of anybody that had
absolutely.
that.
This has been so used around the country that, we get the same feedback from everybody. It doesn't surprise me at all. So the very same part of the brain that process that threat information will process fear, will create the feeling of fear, will create aggression as well. Aggression and fear, they come hand to hand, right? And the product decreases aggression. We know that. And as a matter of fact, we have done a very well done controlled study in sows. And sows, if you've been around pigs, you know that when you group sows, they fight for 12 hours unstoppable. And then if you walk in the barn the day after, they're going to be beat up. They're all scratched and bloody. It is nasty. So when we treat sows right before they're grouped, we had video cameras on the groups, right? So we actually had people, students, watch the sows and then count the number of fights and also time the duration of each fight. Okay. And the animals that were treated with FerAppease experienced a 50% reduction in the number of the fights. And when they decided to fight, they resolved their argument faster, 25% faster. So the fights were not as
you squirt
nasty.
Some of that on your wife, yeah.
Well, I wish it worked.
That's not saying he hasn't tried it. Yeah, okay. But that's another application. With DVAuction, we work so many production sales with a lot of bulls, seed stock type bulls. And we've talked to our producers that have used FerAppease before the sales if they're moving bulls through a ring. And they said, he said, every one of my production sales, I have one or two bulls that kind of blows up in the ring, and it scares the buyers, and the bulls don't sell nearly as well as the average or what they would have brought. And they come through, and I don't have any bulls, which normally they're fairly docile, but whenever they come in to a ring full, and there's people everywhere, then they get scared, and it scares the buyers off. Said I'm not having as much trouble with that.
I mean, the bull sales are huge. I mean, we have a lot of large seed stock operators that use FerAppease when they do their bull sales. And again, it's not only the performance on the ring when they're being sold, But often, you know, you have these large seed stock operators that have partnerships all over the U.S.,
Sure.
and then they'll bring the bulls for the sale.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have bulls from all over the
They're
country
mixing. Yes,
mixing.
right.
It's very stressful, it's dangerous, they're aggressive. So, yeah, treating the bulls before the sale is an incredible idea, and it helps. And it's all about the well being of the bulls, the safety, right? So, if they break a leg a week before the day of the sale, that's a huge loss. I
Oh,
mean, that's
yeah.
huge.
Terrible.
And they can also get injured when they're being transported
Right.
to their new destination. They have to get out of that trailer and not injure themselves, and they
Mm-hmm.
have to go to work. And so I think, yeah, that application is a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
It is a no-brainer.
So we talked about several applications. Now let's talk about the side effects. What's the downside of FerAppease? What's the side effects, the withdrawal? Uh, can you help us
So
with that?
FerAppease is made with ingredients that have been scrutinized by the FDA and deemed to be what we call GRAS, or generally recognized as safe,
Okay.
which means that everything that is in that bottle of FerAppease has been approved by the FDA to be consumed orally by human beings.
Really?
So it's that safe. So the vehicle of FerAppease, which is at the foundation of our intellectual property, the composition that we have, is mineral oil. And mineral oil, you can literally go to Walgreens and buy a
Right.
gallon of mineral oil.
That's the carrier
That's
for.
the carrier
Okay.
for the product. And the 8 fatty acid ingredients that are on FerAppease are all categorized by the FDA under the same classification as generally recognized as safe. And I'll give you a few examples. There's one of the ingredients is arachidonic acid. And arachidonic acid is uh, a mandatory supplement of baby formulas.
Really?
Yeah. In the
Wow.
US, every baby formula is enriched with arachidonic acid.
Uh-huh.
Myristic acid is another one. And then, you know, if you look at your shampoo bottles, it has myristic acid. It's part of the cosmetic. It's added to bakery products. So these are pure chemical ingredients that are used in other industries, and it's part of our daily lives.
Mhm.
So in other words, you can literally take a bottle of FerAppease and drink it,
It's not going to hurt you a
it's not
bit.
going to hurt you. You're going to have a bellyache because of the mineral oil,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's a laxative because it's not absorbed; it'll go right through your system. But other than that,
Mhm.
it is absolutely
But none
safe.
of the product is given orally to the cattle.
No,
It's
and
just on the topical. Right? Yeah.
it's just applied on the skin.
Uh-huh.
5 mLs on the top of the nose and 5 mLs behind the head, and that's it. And it does not get absorbed either. The effect is all local because the gland that detects the pheromone is in the outside and the top of the nose, and that's what we're targeting.
Okay. So you
And
don't have to wait for it to soak in.
no,
So people tell me, oh, I didn't want to get FerAppease because I knew it was going to rain the next day or
oh
something.
no,
That's
not a problem
that's
at
yeah.
all. You know, if you give therapies to a relatively dry animal
Uh-huh.
and you let it out and it rains 5 minutes afterwards,
Uh-huh.
no problem whatsoever. That product goes right through the hair and into the skin, and
That's
it
where you want
accumulates. That's where you want it. The only time that I would not recommend using therapies is when animals are soaking wet. Let's say that you're bringing the cattle in and then there's a thunderstorm and they're soaking wet.
it. Hmm.
That is not going to
Maybe
work
that one
because,
time,
yeah,
yeah.
that one time you don't want to put it on animals that are soaked because the product is oil based.
Uh-huh.
And if their skin
Might
is
slide off, yeah.
completely soaked with water, it would just bounce off the skin. It
Right.
wouldn't be absorbed. But if the animals are dry and it rains 5 minutes after you apply the product, not a problem at all. As a matter of fact, several of our trials that have delivered the best results ever, it rained after the product
Yeah.
was applied. So we have the proof that it won't impact the efficacy of the
So
product.
so doesn't bother to get on you if you get it on you or and it's okay.
It's okay.
No big deal.
It's not a big deal.
Mhm.
It doesn't do anything for people. Again, it's safe. It is an oil product, so you want to be you know, if
Might stain your shirt or something if you get
exactly,
it
it will
on
stain your shirt. I have my shirts are all stained from
from oil, from the
working
mineral
from the
oil.
mineral oil.
And that, what about the withdrawal?
There's zero withdrawal for FerAppease, both for milk and for meat withdrawal. And as a matter of fact, one of the potential uses of the product is using it on animals before they're shipped to slaughter, which in the U.S. is hard to accomplish
Yeah,
because
you don't usually,
we don't usually mess with them.
because you don't want to put them under stress.
That's exactly
But
right.
if you have them going through a narrow chute and you
That would
put
be
some
awesome.
on them, and I've heard that it almost eliminates dark cutters.
Yes, it does.
Which dark cutters isn't a huge percentage, but it's very expensive when you get one.
Yeah, it is. Um, we actually have a published research paper that Dr. Cook did for us, and we treat them before slaughter, and we measured cortisol, which is the stress hormone, at the packing plant. They took a blood sample from the animals when they were hanging upside down. There was really a terminal cortisol sample taken.
You scientists just love to do that kind
We
of stuff,
do,
don't you?
yeah. That was the smoking gun, man, because the cortisol levels on the animals that were treated was 50% lower compared to
Jeez.
the control animals. So they went through that final experience of being harvested,
Mm-hmm.
chill. Their cortisol levels were very low, it was physiological,
Wow.
and the control animals were this high. Now, why do they get dark cutters? They get dark cutters because of stress.
Yes.
So they need sugar in the muscle. It's called glycogen.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're stressed, they deplete that sugar,
Mm-hmm.
and then after they're processed and they're hanging, and the meat is transforming from muscle to beef, right, to meat. That sugar has an important role. It has to be converted into lactic acid, and the pH of the carcass decreases, and we
Okay.
want the pH to be low. If they don't have enough of that sugar, they can't drop the pH, and if they can't drop the pH, you end up with dark cutters.
Huh.
That's what it is. As a matter of fact, we did a study in partnership with JBS in Brazil that exports a lot of beef from Brazil to China.
Uh-huh.
We call them the China beef. And if the carcass pH is above 5.8, the Chinese government will not accept those animals because of stress.
Really?
Yes. So we treat it, and the rejection rate is about 6 to 10%, depending on where the animals are coming from, which you can imagine if
That's
you're a packing
expensive
plant,
too. Yeah.
it's very expensive. So JBS performed this trial in Brazil, treating half of the animals as they went to the packing plant. And we significantly dropped the pH, and we dropped that rejection rate from 8% to 4%.
Goodness.
So just by keeping them calmer, we keep them from mobilizing that sugar.
Yeah.
And then in the post-mortem period, their carcass pHs can drop below the requirement.
It's amazing. All the research we've talked about, and all the applications and the success of this product. And we talked about the downside. There's really not any downside, and no withdrawal. How long does the product last? Let's say you were going to put it on some heifers that you were wanting to get bred for the first time. If you put it on, how long do you think it's giving them some benefit?
Well, we say at least 14 days, but I'll tell you an interesting story. That trial that we did with high-risk cattle that came from Mississippi,
Huh?
it was a receiving trial, right? And we treated them when they got into the feedlot. When they got to 60 days on feed, and at that point, there had been 50 days since they were treated with FerAppease for the last time.
When they were revac.
When they were revac, yeah.
Yes.
So 50 days afterwards, we took the cattle to go around for a 5-hour truck ride.
Just to stress them out
Just
a
to
little
stress
bit more.
them out a little more. It was we were simulating the transportation from the backgrounder to the finish yard.
Yeah, you took them for a road trip to
Road
Amarillo,
trip,
didn't
yeah.
you?
And then they went back, right back to College Station. And I'll tell you this, the control animals shrunk 5.5% during that trip. The body weight shrunk 5.5%. The treated animals shrunk only 3.3%. That was extremely statistically significant. So even 50 days after they were treated, there was still a benefit that
Yeah.
was measurable with the decreased shrinking that occurred during that transportation, that 5-hour transportation.
Dr. Rodrigo, I'm just trying to think of any reason that you wouldn't apply FerAppease to cattle if you had the opportunity to do it. I can't think of any reason not to. And it's affordable.
It's affordable. FerAppease is almost the perfect technology because it is affordable. It has a very high return over investment. For every application that we have ever studied and evaluated, we're talking about the lowest ROI is 1 to 10, the lowest application. It increases performance and health in animals. It also improves the behavior of animals. So I actually have a lot of clients that use the product just because they want to have cattle that
easier to take care
handle.
of. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a perfectly fine
That's
reason.
enough right there.
That's enough right
Without
there.
all the other.
Exactly. But all of these things are being accomplished, and this is what makes the product so unique. All of these amazing things are being accomplished just because the animals are not as afraid, they're not as stressed, they're not as affected by our presence and our management practices. They're not as anxious. Therefore, their well-being is so much better.
Mm-hmm.
We're making money by having more production and healthier animals, lower mortality, lower morbidity, just because we're improving their well-being, which is amazing.
Yeah, and it's good for them.
Good for
Good
us.
for our pocketbook.
Good for the industry.
It is,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Good for the consumer because we're giving better quality product to them, more, right? So we need more beef.
Sure.
We're giving the industry the chance to produce more beef and higher quality beef. But also, I think the point of view, and not to get into that too much, but I think that our consumers would appreciate the fact that the animals are, their well-being have been significantly improved by this product. So this is another component to it as well.
It does. Well, this has been a really informative visit that we've had. We've learned a lot about FerAppease, all the applications, the ways we can use it, the value of it. And this has been Corbitt Wall with a Feeder Flash feature here with Dr. Rodrigo at the FERA Diagnostics and Biologicals in College Station, Texas.